A teenage girl was once stopped from taking her first-class seat, and when the flight crew assumed she didn't belong, they had no idea who her father was. But when he showed up, everything changed. Stay with us until the end to see how this remarkable story unfolds, and let us know what time you're watching. On that busy day at the airport, the air was filled with the hum of rolling luggage, overhead announcements, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee from nearby kiosks. The energy of travel was in full swing as passengers moved through security, eagerly awaiting their flights. Amara Johnson, a 16-year-old with sparkling eyes and a quiet confidence, walked through the terminal with her carry-on bag in tow. Her father, James Johnson, had surprised her with a first-class ticket for her birthday, a gift that she had worked hard to earn after months of academic achievements. This was her first time flying first class, and the thought of the spacious seats, gourmet meals, and luxury service made her heart race with excitement. Standing in line at the gate, Amara eagerly checked her boarding pass as she waited for her moment to board. Her phone buzzed with a message from her dad. "Enjoy your first-class experience, sweetheart. You've earned it." Amara smiled and quickly typed a reply, feeling a surge of pride as she made her way toward the boarding area. It was her first real step into the world of luxury travel, a world that had always seemed out of reach, and she was ready to embrace it. But little did she know, her excitement would soon turn into an unexpected confrontation that would test her sense of belonging. As Amara approached the first-class section of the plane, she was ready to settle into her seat. However, just as she reached her row, a flight attendant stopped her. Amara held up her boarding pass, showing the large print that read, "First Class." "This is my seat," she said politely, trying to remain composed despite the unease growing in her chest. The attendant, Stephanie, barely glanced at the ticket before crossing her arms. "Miss, first-class seats are assigned to passengers with premium tickets. If you don't have the correct boarding pass, I'll need you to return to your assigned section." Amara's cheeks flushed as she looked at the ticket again. "But this is my assigned section. My dad bought this seat for me," she explained. Stephanie's lips curled into a skeptical smile. "Your dad bought it," she repeated with doubt. "Right. Why don't we double-check with the gate agent?" Passengers around them began to glance over, their whispers growing louder. A man in a suit raised an eyebrow, while a woman across the aisle gave Amara a sympathetic look. Amara's heart pounded as she stammered, "I don't understand. This is my ticket." Stephanie sighed dramatically. "Fine, sit for now, but I'll be verifying this shortly. If there's a mistake, you'll need to move." Amara nodded, her throat tight as she slipped into the seat. She could feel the weight of the stares from nearby passengers, the embarrassment building under the surface. The attendant walked off, but Amara's relief was short-lived. What if they really made her leave? As she sat in her assigned seat, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, the whispers of nearby passengers grew louder. She could feel their eyes on her, some glancing with curiosity, others with open judgment. The sting of Stephanie's earlier words still lingered. Amara tried to hold back the frustration rising inside her. She replayed the scene in her mind, the dismissive tone, the skepticism, the assumption that she didn't belong. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was infuriating. All she wanted was to enjoy the first-class experience her father had gifted her, but instead, she felt like an imposter in a space where she had every right to be. Amara reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over her dad's contact number. She thought about calling him, but hesitated. Her father had always told her to stand tall in the face of challenges, to handle difficult situations with grace and confidence. "You belong wherever you choose to be," he would always say. Those words echoed in her mind, giving her the strength to breathe deeply and stay calm. Looking around the cabin, Amara noticed a range of expressions from fellow passengers. Some offered sympathetic glances, while others wore subtle smirks that only added to her discomfort. She wanted to explain herself, to shout that she had earned her seat just like everyone else. But instead she sat upright, lifted her chin slightly, and decided to wait. She trusted her father's wisdom and believed in her own worth. If the flight attendant wanted to question her place, she would let her father's actions speak louder than any words she could say. But as the moments dragged on, Amara wondered if staying silent was the right choice. What if things spiraled further before her dad arrived? The tension in the air was thick. The tension in the cabin was palpable as Stephanie returned to Amara's row, this time accompanied by the gate agent. The flight attendant's expression remained skeptical, while the gate agent nervously glanced between Amara and the boarding pass in her hand. "Miss," Stephanie began, her tone sharp, "we've reviewed your ticket." But before she could finish, the cabin door opened and James Johnson stepped onto the plane. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit and exuding an air of authority, his presence immediately drew the attention of everyone in the room. He scanned the cabin, his sharp eyes landing on Amara. The moment their gazes met, her shoulders relaxed slightly and she offered him a small, relieved smile. James walked purposefully down the aisle, his tall frame radiating confidence. Stephanie turned toward him, her irritation momentarily giving way to confusion. "Sir, we're just handling a seating issue here," she said, forcing a polite tone. James did not slow his stride. "A seating issue?" he repeated, his voice calm but carrying a weight that immediately silenced the murmurs around him. "With my daughter?" Stephanie blinked, her mouth opening and closing as she processed his words. "Your daughter?" she echoed weakly. James stopped beside Amara, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder before turning to face Stephanie and the gate agent. "Yes, my daughter," he said firmly. "And I'd like to know why she's being questioned about her seat, especially when her boarding pass clearly states she belongs here." The manager escorted Stephanie to the back of the plane, leaving the cabin in an uneasy silence. Passengers exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of shock and awkward embarrassment. Some murmured quietly among themselves, while others avoided eye contact altogether, perhaps grappling with their own complicity in silently observing the earlier confrontation. James turned to Amara, his expression softening. He crouched slightly to meet her gaze at eye level. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Amara nodded, though her voice trembled slightly. "I'm fine, Dad. But why does this always happen? Why do people assume?" James placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Because some people don't see beyond their own biases. But today they learned that assumptions have consequences. And more importantly, you showed them what it means to handle a situation with grace." As he stood up, James addressed the cabin. His voice was calm but deliberate. "To everyone here, let this be a reminder. The next time you see someone, don't assume you know their story based on how they look or what you think you know. Every person deserves respect, whether they're my daughter, a stranger, or anyone else." The cabin fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. A man in a tailored suit across the aisle cleared his throat and spoke hesitantly. "Mr. Johnson, I just want to say I'm sorry. We all should have spoken up earlier." A woman in the row ahead of Amara chimed in, her tone genuine. "She's lucky to have a father like you, and for what it's worth, she handled herself beautifully." As the plane soared through the sky, Amara gazed out the window, watching the clouds drift past. The tension from the earlier confrontation was fading, replaced by a quiet sense of pride. She turned to her father, who was seated beside her. His posture was relaxed, but his expression thoughtful. "Thank you for standing up for me, Dad," she said softly. James smiled, his voice warm but firm. "I'll always stand up for you, Amara. But you stood up for yourself first, and that's what I'm most proud of. You didn't let them shake you." Amara nodded, her confidence growing with his words. "I just wish people didn't judge so quickly." James leaned forward slightly, his tone carrying the weight of years of wisdom. "People will judge no matter what. It's not right, but it's the reality. What matters is how you respond. Every time you rise above it, every time you demand the respect you deserve, you're teaching the world to be better." As a flight attendant from another section approached, she placed a fresh glass of sparkling water on Amara's tray with a kind smile. "On behalf of the crew, we offer our sincerest apologies," she said, her voice genuine. Amara glanced at her dad, who nodded approvingly. She sipped the water, letting the moment of vindication sink in. James leaned back in his seat, glancing at his daughter. "Remember, Amara," he said gently, "you belong wherever you choose to be, and no one has the right to make you feel otherwise."